Welcome to Hey Dad Podcast. Real dads, tough issues, and a genuine love for a fatherless generation.
Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Hey Dad Podcast is sponsored by Rise Church of La Habra. And we need to say that not all the views expressed on the show today necessarily reflect the churches. My co-hosts are Frank Lamelli. Thank you for being here, Frank. And Chris Lawler. Thank you.
You bet.
Both veterans of fatherhood and marriage. The topic today really starts from a question we have from somebody, a 21-year-old man. And this is a man who does not have a father in his life. And these are, the question he had. So his question was this: is it always this hard? How long till I get my feet underneath me financially? Okay, this is a young man who was thrust and he had to work to contribute to his family's home. Right. So he's thrust into the workforce out of necessity that his family needs him to work. And he has a car, he has a girlfriend, he has friends, and he's trying to survive at the same time. Right. And he was really exasperated when he said this to me. He really did say, "Is it always this hard, Rick?" Yeah. And how long does it take till you get it? Like, I think he looks at us like, "Oh wow, you arrived." And maybe that's part of the answer and the observation in that. And that's closely related to how to work. So I see them, I think, and it's only part of the answer is how to work, how to stage yourself and work. But is it always this hard?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to give great honor to that young man that he's entered this battle. Because he's entered into a battle that every man that ever walked with responsibility in this world has had to enter. He's drinking from the same cup of suffering, and we all face that at one point in our lives. And I remember the allegory for me when I was young was there's a threshold where I get my wheels off the ground, like an airplane trying to take off. You pick up a lot of steam and you're bumping along that runway a long time before you build up enough airspeed, enough financial airspeed, so to speak, to lift off and bear the weight of your own life. Now I'm paying my own bills, I'm paying my own way through life, and I'm not dependent upon anybody's help. It was a long time. And thankfully, I had the generosity of my church. Back in those days, I was in a communal Jesus freak church, going back to the Jesus People movement in the 60s and 70s.
You lived on a commune.
I lived in a commune, yeah. So I learned my craft, the job that I ultimately turned into a career. I learned that living in that commune. So we all shared expenses for a long time. And then when the communal thing kind of faded away, I lived with a group of other men, like a brother's dorm. We had this upstairs of an old Victorian house that was walled off, and we called it a Skylab because they had no living room, no communal room. It just had a hallway and rooms sticking off of it. So we called that Skylab, and all the brothers would kind of have different rooms. I had one little room. It's cheap enough to where I could pay my room rent and run my little work business. And it wasn't too long before I was paying. I just woke up one day and I realized I'm paying my way. I'm buying my own food. I'm not relying upon anybody to give me anything. But of course, I had to live in very inexpensive circumstances. And that's the moment you're looking for.
How did that feel, though? Because you're thinking you're live without a net.
Yeah.
How does that feel? Did you feel lonely or did you feel independent?
Well, it kind of grew out of the work ethic. When I was in the commune, we lived in a house where there like 100 people were flopping there every night, but only 10 people were actually working to support it. And so everything we made went to the communal house to pay the expenses because it was a Christian outreach. We were given $5 a week as our allowance We would take that $5 and we go to a coffee shop and order a cup of coffee, which is refillable. And we drink so much coffee, we were sitting on the top of the ceiling upside down with caffeine. But that's what you did. And you know, maybe you really wanted to splurge to get a piece of pie. But the point was, all that work that I did, my craft, I wasn't getting money from it. It was contributing to ministry. Yeah. This did a different kind of infusion of ethics in me. It meant that whatever I did, I had to do before the Lord. Whatever work I was doing was no different than a worship leader picking up a guitar and playing a worship song. My skill and my work ethic and how much I gave to my job was before God. It had to be, because there was no money coming from it. And so if I didn't have that, if I strictly went into a job where I had to pay my bills and it was all about the money I was getting, it would have been a very, very different kind of picture. And I don't think I would have built my work ethic the same way under those kind of circumstances. And maybe that's what this young man is kind of facing. He's in contact with his desperate need for cash, for money all the time, and his very limited ability to generate that cash. You know, and that's a very hard dilemma to be in.
He's 21, you said?
21.
Okay. You know,
do we have a first name for him?
Well, if I...
Let's call him Peter.
Yeah. Or, you know what? Oh, boy. Let's go Jesse.
Jesse. All right, we'll call him Jesse. Okay.
So I think it's going to be a little tricky maybe, or maybe not, to answer that, because you have us in our generation, which is years back, and then you have now. So I haven't gone out to look for a job. I'm blessed that I run a successful business and I haven't had to. And the people that I hire are actually mid-30s and above, and there's a lot of them are married, so they're not youngsters. But I could say this: back when I was born in 67, I'm 55 years old. I believe my very first job was at the age of 7. So my mother's side of the family was all business. My dad's side of the family was all college. I didn't like school. I went to school, but I didn't like school. So I took the business side, and it was just in me. I didn't even have to do anything. So first thing was a paper route. I took that, and my mom helped me, to band everything up and all that and get everything ready. And then I flew on my own with my bike and throwing the papers. From there, I went to cutting lawns in my neighborhood. I was getting paid $5, From there, I went to work in the swap meet. And then I didn't just want to work in the swap meet. I learned what the people were selling at that time. Torn jeans and cargo pocket shorts and all Levi shorts were actually made from other pants that were tore up. People used to throw away their 501 jeans. I used to collect them. I used to go in my neighborhood knocking door to door saying, if you have any Levi's you don't want, I'll take them. Yeah.
So outside of the box thinking. Wow.
Well, I developed that. I developed that through the years of just being involved in the swap meet scene and having this ability to understand business at a very young age, not knowing the value of the dollar really, but just knowing that I was going to get paid. Yeah. And so I jumped to various things, many ventures. I had a clothesline. I silk screened. I was good at drawing, so I did my own artwork, things like that. So I think I've only maybe had one job during the time I was in high school, but I've always had a business. Now, I've learned that whatever you put into it, you're going to get out of it. Okay, no matter what. And through business, it's a whole different animal than working for someone. It doesn't matter if you're a crappy person, if you have a bad attitude, because whatever you put into it, you're going to get out of it.
But Frank, what about the liftoff, though? The liftoff from being under your parents' roof to the independence part?
Well, I was going to get to that point. Now, the way that was possible for me is that all the way to the age of 22, I was at home. I never was asked to pay anything, but I did contribute. After a certain age, first I argued why I have to pay. I went through that phase, and then I did, understand. So, but my parents, as dysfunctional as my home was, I was never worried about getting kicked out or and then we were fortunate that my father was an engineer and we were middle class, then went to upper middle class. We didn't struggle there. So, but I think the family structure, as dysfunctional as we were, there was some type of a structure there where my father was a functional drunk. He was a drunk behind closed doors. He's very responsible, hardworking, smart man. My mother was the same way. She was a stay-home mom, but she had her little ventures, her little business ventures that she would do because it was in her DNA. So I did have that kind of weird balance where I was inspired by some things and then I was kind of discouraged by others. But the things that I was discouraged actually made me stronger and believing that, I'm going to have to do something because I don't want to live like this. So, but it did have to do with the fact that we weren't like per se a family that was poor, or didn't have the resources. We did. My mom was very resourceful. We lived in Santa Fe Springs. She knew what the city offered for different things. So she was always looking. And then she led me to do this and go do and talk to this person. So I had that backup. Now, forwarding to what I've seen through my kids nowadays and the way the workforce is now, I would be scared. I would, because it seems like all the jobs that are out there are fast food or selling phones or things that the only way that's going to make you money is if you're an entrepreneur, you're smart enough to get your own little business and kick it off. And now, I've also seen on the internet that there's tons and tons of these young people that these businesses are kicking off. All the food industry, the technology industry, the art industry. These are kids that really are making something out of this internet and new technology. So I think that it starts at home. It's like if you're going to put your kid in a position where, hey, you know what, your money is needed here in order for us to function, that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge with us answering this question, we're from a different generation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We were raised in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Yeah. It was a
where the economic conditions were very different.
Yeah, exactly. Not as much money was around as back then. No. We grew up. You learn. You have to work hard. You just got to toughen up, and you better work hard.
Yep.
And you better respect your employer because he's giving you a check, even if he doesn't deserve it.
Right. This is the continuity. The point of continuity is you start with yourself.
Yeah.
Jesse, you start with yourself. You're not making a lot of money. You may not like your job so much. And it's nothing but struggle. That's what you're acquainted with right now. But you put this value within yourself that anything that comes to my hand is going to be blessed with God's presence. Okay, so it means if I have to scrub a toilet, that toilet is going to be scrubbed so pristine that anybody walking by is going to say a man of God was here. Okay, this is what I got in that commune. Yeah. I didn't have that understanding naturally, but they drove this into my head that anything we do, even if you really know how to do it, you pour your effort into it. You pour your love into it.
There's a lot of value.
You pour yourself into it as if God is right over your shoulder, right. Not working in fear, but he's over there blessing every movement of your hand. Right. And what happens, this question that came on is, will it always be so hard? Yes. In fact, it's going to get harder. But the good news is you're going to get stronger.
Yeah.
It's going to get easier because you're going to bulk up.
Yeah.
You're going to develop the muscles that it takes that we have right now to run businesses. Right. I wasn't always running a business.
Yeah.
The business I started that I was getting my $5 a week allowance, I poured myself into it. I made every little job that came to me as perfect as I could possibly make it. And I learned how to make it even more perfect. I cared about it. That's the point. I didn't look at a job and say, well, that's going to be worth this much money. I looked at a job and says, how can I figure out how to make that perfect? Right. And by exercising that quality within me, it built a core of strength within me to the point where opportunities started to flow my way. Because, we're in a weird environment now that's not like the environment that we grew up in. The opportunities are different, but also the competition is so much different. Yeah. Because right now our borders are wide open. And you know what? It's not millionaires coming over the border competing for residences in Beverly Hills. It's people coming in that are going to compete for a spot on the sidewalk. And they'll take any job. And they're more entrepreneurial than often Americans are.
To speak to that, I mentor young men. And one of the things I tell them is get a trade. Either go to college or get a trade. Don't compete in the entry-level labor field.
Right.
Because you have guys coming over whose families depended on them, who've been working hard since 7 years old, hard labor, they laugh at it, and they weren't raised soft like us here in the United States. Unfortunately, people don't like to hear that, but it's true. I'm sorry. They're going to get worked under the table. They'll live 10 people to an apartment and send most of their money home.
Right.
You cannot compete with that because you want to raise a family and own a home.
Right.
So I always tell them, get a career lined up. Don't lose the opportunity. Don't be. And I also tell them this: don't buy a car so soon. Get your education, whether that's trade or college. Get your education in first before you financially strap yourself.
Yeah.
Because that thing will pull you out of whatever you're trying to succeed at. You know,
that's a really tough thing for young guys to manage. Is don't bring on weight.
Yeah.
Keep the weight off, the weight of debt, the weight of things, because everything you buy, when you buy a phone, you're buying a siphon that's going to siphon your money off.
Yeah.
It's not just the cost of buying that. Same thing with a car. Everybody knows about a car. You know what's worse? A girlfriend. A girlfriend is more expensive than an English sports car.
No one's going to take that advice, though. I tell you right now, don't get a girlfriend.
I know it.
Nah,
but if you can keep yourself relatively free from these drains, it gives you a chance to build personal equity.
Right.
You're building the equity of knowing your craft, or give yourself to craft. And by the way, you need to go and look on the internet for Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe does a number of shows called Dirty Jobs, and he's an advocate of guys that are overlooking the opportunities in the trades. I mean, being a plumber, man.
The trades are paying today.
Absolutely.
They pay well.
Yeah, far more than half the people, more than half of the people that graduate from college, they never even work in the field that they graduated in.
They're not ready for work.
I went that route. They're not conditioned
ready
for it.
Work after.
But my dad explained this once to me. It says, you want to find a job that either very few people can do or very few people want to do. If you think about those two criteria, not everybody can be a brain surgeon because not everybody can pass through all the layers of education to get there. So that's why there's very few brain surgeons. That's why they command tremendous money. But not everybody wants to fix the sewer under your house like a plumber does. And so that's why they command a huge salary. But everybody can flip a burger. Everybody wants to be a rock star. Everybody wants to be on TV. So you avoid those jobs where anybody can do it and everybody wants to do it. Those are the ones that are not going to pay anything.
One of the I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but one of the basic things I've told my kids is you got to really love what you do. Mm-hmm. It's true what you're talking about, competition. It's true what you guys are saying. It is very true. But I believe, because I lived it, if I love something, I don't care if it was like a burger guy or whatever, I'm going to be the best burger guy that's out there. And not only am I going to flip those burgers, but every opportunity I get to season that burger differently, I'm going to do it. So hopefully somebody will be like, hey, your burger tastes really great. Why? Well, because I'm not doing what they're telling me to do. I was always that kid that went against the grain.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I wouldn't settle for I wasn't content. I just felt in my mind and in my heart that I was meant for something bigger. And every time, and I went through so many different things, man. I would pick them up and drop them because I felt like, okay, this is great, but this is not what it is. It's this and it's that. But everything I did is, like you said, is I poured everything into that. I believed to the fullest that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And even though it didn't turn out that way, though, but I learned something to where now, on another show, we were talking about how there's so many things that I know and my kids don't like it, but it's because at a very young age, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of business. I love being around people.
Right.
And I wasn't focused on the money. I was just having fun and loving what I did. So now I tell my kids, I said, look, if you choose to go to school, do it because that's what you really want to do. Because if you're just saying, well, I'm going to go to school because, if you go to school, like you look like you're smarter, or maybe
most of the time the move to go to college is just punting adulthood down the line, and
it costs a lot of money, especially if you're not paying it for yourself.
You come out of that just saddled with debt, with a great hope that somehow America's going to forgive the debt. There are a lot of people that paid full freight; and they don't want to forgive your debt. So don't be counting on that. Yeah. But this thing you talked about, pouring your love into something. I hear Jesse saying, "Well, how do I figure out what it is I love? How do I find that?
I think that's where we come in as parents. I did this with my son. My son's very smart. He wants to be a physicist. He started college. It was a little bit harder than he thought. And then he was kind of feeling like, I want to get a job and I need to drive. And he's 18 going on 19. And he kind of tried to take everything at one time. And then he was really frustrated. So I said, look, let me talk to you. I said, you're 18 going on 19. You don't have to start school right now. I'm not telling you not to go to school. If that's what's in your heart, first, why don't we do this? Let's prioritize. I said, let's get a job first, because the job's going to help you to feel better about yourself. Right. You're going to bring in some cash into your pocket. And I have my father passed away and left me with a couple of vehicles, and I have a truck that I gave to him for his birthday. The truck has been sitting there, and I said, the day you can pay the registration and insurance, you can drive it. So I put it under your name, you can drive it. So now here we are. I said, in order for you to afford that vehicle, you got to have a job first. And in order for you to get to school, because we have responsibilities, we can't be taking you to school. So I kind of said job, license, car, then think about school.
Yeah, that's aligning the power the way it ought to flow.
So I lined it up for him that way. And he's like, and all of a sudden all his stress was removed. But my point was, it's that for him, I don't know if he has that, or if he has anybody that can just simplify that huge problem that he thinks he has. Is not that big, but a parent can...
Jesse, you're talking about.
Yeah, Jesse. Yeah. A parent can make such an impact on his way of thinking or feeling like, what am I going to do? This is hard. When in reality, a parent can come in and just, paint that path where he's like, whoa. Yeah.
I have an idea for Jesse. If your dad, you don't have a dad that can explain this to you, let me give you an allegory. I own a big acoustic bass, right? It's made in Czechoslovakia back in the 1920s. Well, it'll play all the notes like a bass will, but when you play a D, it rings because the wood is tuned to that note. The guy who set my bass up explained that. He said, this is a D bass. And I said, what do you mean a D bass? It means that this wood has been crafted, sanded, and shaped so that when you hit that D, it's the strongest note. All the other notes can be played and they can be heard, but when you play the note that this was made for, it just resonates. And this is what the thing is, Jesse. You were made tuned to a note.
Yeah.
To some kind of a thing that you, whenever you stumble upon it, it resonates. And the thing is, everything you do in your life is throwing you clues.
Yeah.
Because you tend to be gravitated to these things that are tuned to you.
Yeah.
That's why you're playing that particular video game and not that one. That's why you go to this sport. That's why you like this movie and not that movie. It's because those things that you really like, they get close to the heart of the way that you're tuned. If you can pay attention to that and start making choices in what you do as a profession that come closer or further away, let them resonate. Is this make the note go strong? You'll find yourself channeling into a whole range of opportunities that are tuned to your abilities. And that's where you'll end up doing something you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
But that's probably the biggest anxiety for a lot of young people. What is that? And I always ask my children and their friends, or really my children's friends, what do you want to do? 100% of the answers have been,
they don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say to that, though, is what's the one thing you can do for 14 hours and you didn't even notice? That like you're saying about finding the, I know, and it's not video games. Take that one off the table. Well, maybe it is today. I don't know. But like finding that D, what can you do and just get lost in, and it's easy.
Right.
And now you're understanding where your strengths are falling, because we're all designed with strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And a real telltale sign is when you're doing the thing that you were made to do, it produces energy. Yeah. You're more jacked up after doing it for 10 hours than you were when you started. When you're doing something that might be an ability, you can do it and you can do a reasonable job, but it's not tuned to you, you're exhausted after doing it. Right. Because it pulls energy out.
I'm thinking about something, and a young man like Jesse, maybe he has that weight on him that he needs to work to provide at home as well. Okay, I may get some flack from what I'm going to say, but I want to say it in a very respectful way. I think it's great that he can provide. I think that the mother asking the son, because now he stepped into that role that his father should have, I think, well, you know, I feel bad about the situation that has happened, but that truly isn't his responsibility. And I think in these times, there's so many young boys and girls that are put in that position because the fathers have split. And this is what I want to say. You're awesome for standing in the gap. Yeah. And you're amazing already. So I don't know if you think that's anything, but that's the most important and the most awesomest thing that you're doing, is that you're standing in the gap. But with that, I'm going to say this, and I know it's probably hard. I wasn't in this place, but if I was, I think it'd be tough. But at some point, you're going to have to say, Mom, I have to move on. I got to do something with my life. You said, in another show, I believe you said that you were living with your grandmother, I think it was. And then you said that it was time for you to go, and you helped her out or something when you moved out.
That was an offline discussion. Yeah. I was put in the exact same situation. I was actually asked to start working at 17. So I dropped out of high school and I started working, and I was celebrated for it. I was the hero of my grandma. That was my grandmother's hero. I'm the one who saved the day. And I loved filling that spot. I hated school. And that's the launch I got. And it was so hurtful. And it wasn't until I was 21 years old, working in a factory, and I was working graveyard, which is like the worst shift you could work. And the factory was dirty, smelly. It had oily. Just you think of a gray, dark factory. It was that. I was out in Vernon, California. So I'm walking into work depressed because I hated the job so much. And I looked around at those greasy walls and I said, I got to get out of here, man. And that's when it clicked to me. I got to do something. Yeah. I went back to high school, got my diploma. Then I went to school in radiology for x-ray and so forth, but investing in my education. But the whole time I invested in my education, I didn't have any support from my family.
But see, one can say, okay, well, that's the way it was panned out for you in your life. That's the way it was. It couldn't have been any different. I beg to differ. I think that you should have finished school, you know, and only for the mere fact that, you know, you were at a young age with your friends growing up, doing things that your life was supposed to have. You were supposed to experience in that time, the fun times and all this stuff. You had to grow up really quick. So that can benefit you or that can hurt you in the future. We don't know where that's going to land.
No, I would say benefit. I'll tell you why. It made me hungry. I always had the feeling, and I think Jesse could understand this, I always had the feeling that I got nobody to count on. But it makes you lean, it makes you mean. Any job I've gone to, I promise you this, no one's ever worked harder than me because I felt desperate. I didn't have, you know what I mean? So this is where I don't know if the advice I give to young people today will resonate with them.
Yeah.
But my advice is things like this. Always work harder than everyone else. Always give your job 2 weeks notice if you're going to quit.
Right.
Don't quit through too many jobs because it looks really bad on a resume that you've been bouncing all over the place.
Yeah.
And then try to find, if you start from a desperate situation where you have financial liability, well, that's the cards you were dealt. Toughen up.
Yeah.
Right.
Toughen up. Go to night school. Night school when you're working a full-time job sucks. Yeah. Bad. I mean, you're excited when the class first starts. When you start getting towards the end, you got your finals years. Man, you're drowning. And
it's a hero's quest, though.
It's hard.
Now, I'll give you the example that sticks out as a shining example that was relevant in times of ancient times as good old Joseph. Look, Joseph was sold as a slave by his family. Okay, kicked out. And he went to Potiphar's house, was accused of raping Potiphar's wife. He went to prison. And these are year-long chunks of horrible experiences. But you know what? The continuity line that ran all the way through Joseph's life is whatever he found himself in, whatever situation, he was before the Lord. Right. He did it as if God was right there with him. That's what I got in that commune. Is whatever situation you're in, no matter how desperate, boring, horrible, dangerous even, walk in that and bring God with you. Say, Lord, what do I do with this moment right now? This task is right before me. Mm-hmm. Let excellence pour through. And if you let that happen, opportunities bend and they start flowing to you because you'll get recognized. I'm an employer. You're an employer. You know, you work for a large company that is looking for employees. You know who stands out to me is a guy that's got that spirit, even if he doesn't know anything. In fact, I like them better when they know nothing.
They don't know nothing.
Because then you don't have to unteach them. But if they have that core spirit that I'm going to show up and it's going to be the presence of God, no matter what you give me, I'm going to do with all the excellence I can possibly muster, and I have my Heavenly Father back in my play.
Yeah.
I want that guy.
Yeah.
I want him because I can train him. I can make a fortune with a guy like that. Because I know the opportunities. I can make the business flow to this person. And if they can pour out that kind of blessing on the work that I can give them, we're both going to get rich, brother. And that's how you get your wheels off the ground, is eventually you keep practicing that strength.
Yeah.
Practice that strength of being, working before the Lord. Eventually, employers want you. They'll pay a little more for you. They don't want to lose you. They can't fire you. And that's how you'll get your wheels off the ground.
You know, Chris, if you get the timer again, I lost track. If the one thing, Chris, I think you really hit the nail on the head is it's not that it gets easier, you get tougher.
You get stronger.
And that strength comes by doing it. You go to work when you don't feel like it, when you're depressed or it sucks, you're building your strength.
Yeah.
And you will grow into it. It's very natural. And then you get tougher to where lifting 100 pounds isn't a big deal anymore.
Right.
So that's the advice I'd give. I'd also try to say, focus on trying to build a career. You know, get an apprentice job. Oh man, it pays nothing and I'm getting my hands dirty. You're learning a lifelong trade that you can make something out of.
Can I pull back to that last moment, right before The Apprentice, when you said it gets stronger, it gets easier because it gets stronger. Here's a principle of life. If you enter into life looking for the easy way, then life is going to get harder.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Impossible.
Is that you'll learn to find the shortcuts, and that's going to be the way you play it. And before you know it, life just kind of starts piling on you, and it gets enormously difficult. But if you make the choice now at the young part of your life that I'm going to give myself to what's difficult, then you get stronger. And then later in life, it gets way easier. That's why you look at us and you say, well, look, you guys got it made. You know,
it looks that way.
It looks that way.
Because as you build knowledge, it gets easier.
Yes.
Like you become experts in things, and life becomes easier. More opportunities, more money comes your way, but you got to pay your dues, and it's okay.
Just so you know, real quick track. Grew up with an alcoholic father, verbally abusive, been divorced. I've lost everything twice on recessions. I felt like I was never going to get back up on my feet. I finally came to the Lord later in life when I was 41. You know, so it hasn't been easy, man. Like they say nowadays, I hear the kids saying, I've been grinding and grinding and grinding. But let me tell you something. When I got serious with the Lord and finally understood what submission is and finally understood what reverence for God, respect, the fear of God, when I understood those things, and I'm still learning, I haven't gotten it. Let me tell you something. Sometimes I feel guilty because I'm at home. I'm not working and the checks are coming in. Why are they coming in? It's not because people are giving money. It's because I'm getting paid for all this stuff that I put hours and time and blood and tears and everything into, and sitting there saying, Lord, why is this happening to me? And oh my God, Father, help me through this. And I screwed up and this and that. And it's not just business, it's family, it's kids, it's neighbors, it's clients. I said, but you know what? Now I'm learning to have peace in the Lord, to trust the Lord entirely with everything, because nothing's mine. So now at my age of 55, I'm just beginning to learn to rest in the Lord, have his peace and have his joy, because that's it.
Yeah.
Let me close with this, guys. I think you're so right. You're never going to find purpose in life from work. You're going to find purpose in life from God.
Right.
You're going to find your joy and your strength from God.
Yes.
Work is on the side. Too many people get that switched.
Yep.
So with that being said, I know we're a little bit all over the place on this, but there's a lot of advice to give on this. Yeah. But we'd like to thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to close here, and I'd like to ask Chris to close us in prayer.
Thank you, Father. Jesse, We pray that the Lord's anointing would be upon you, that scales would fall from your eyes, and you would see where your strengths are. You would see the exact right moves to make, and that you would pour from the vault of your own heart a love out to whatever it is your hand finds to do, and that would plow a course for you. You would pick up speed, and you'd be wheels off the ground before you know it. In the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus we pray.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us today.